not just women are in danger, but all marginalized people, where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Bostonred here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts on a bridge to history, what body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psychology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Bostonred, peace out.
Friday Java on the 29th of December 2017. Our last program for the year of 2017. Happy Kwanzaa to everyone out there. And today, let's see, what is our theme? We got to do this again. Our theme is Umjama, cooperative economics. And tomorrow will be Nina, that is purpose, Equaniba, creativity, and finally we have Imani, which is faith. But today we will deal with Jamana, just UJAMMA, hopefully. We don't have our theme up today because we have our Friday Java theme. But nonetheless, we'll start this off and with some news out of the Washington Post, difficulty ahead for the Trump administration in 2018. And we will go out with a final speech to his supporters by Al Franken. He made it at an industrial site in the city of Minneapolis. And it's about 20-something minutes. You will hear his speech in its entirety as he goes forward with the fight and the struggle. He connected it to the late Minnesota Senator Paul Wellstone. So we look forward to hearing that. But firstly, we'll go here. And also, we have a poll from PPP. They are out of North Carolina, showing that Al Franken had around 50%. We'll get to that after we finish with the Washington Post. Nonetheless, DJ Trump is at the Mar-a-Lago club with his friends, cronies, and whomever else I suppose showed up. But they had a big discussion there in Washington. The thing with politics, it's 24/7, and it used to be continual politics in the years of Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson talked politics virtually all the time. LBJ was not one to be interested in any sports, etc., when he went to football games, he was talking politics. But now with the 24/7 news cycle, it's more of a germane topic, we'll use that word, than it has ever been in the history. And also you have things that are truly surprises that come up. The Republican tax plan is not being received very well at all, but and some of the setbacks that they received, including what happened to the debacle in Alabama. Unexpected defeats in deep red states. Well, what happens, you get into some contagions there. Tennessee is one to look at. You have some Democrats in Tennessee of the Al Gore senior, not Al Gore, but Al Gore senior types that are very pragmatic, middle of the road, what we call Eisenhower Republicans. In our last cast, we pit Dr. Cornel West against the writer Ta'ishi Coates. Well, the whole thing was that Professor West had an article in the New York Times, of all places, that he was not a darling of the neocons, or the neoliberals, whatever you want to call those people. And there are a lot of those people around. A lot of those people had influence in the administration of Barack Obama, no doubt about it. And how they are defined from the traditional liberal types, we can go back and fall back upon Professor Hobhouse that wrote about liberals. In the European sector, the liberals or the social Dems are to the right of various others. And in some countries, such as in London, in England, you have a Liberal Party which rose up and now has went back to its normal situation. And you have social democratic types around there, and then of course you have Labor. I guess you'd say the Lib Dems were the social democrats there. They were more the right of center people, but they would be left of center here. More built on the Tony Blair model of labor when Tony Blair was the prime minister. If you recall, he was the person that was the prime minister that set the stage, or actually while Bill Clinton set the stage for Tony Blair. It's sort of vice versa. It's like Margaret Thatcher set the stage in the UK for Reagan. And if you want to go to Brexit, you'd have them setting the stage for this DJ Trump and his lot that came upon us. But these are ultra-right movements. The neo-conservatives being people that believe in business partnerships with the government. And it's been more to an extent. Eisenhower warned against this, I like Ike, against the industrial complex, military-industrial complex. But now it is, they don't even call it that anymore because it's so integrated within government and various other business models. You'll hear, even on the local scene, various mayors, etc., talk about public-private partnerships. What they mean by that is using the public's money to the advantage of a private entrepreneurial venture. It is usually not a 50-50 venture because the government entity, by virtue of what it is, does not make a profit. So they're not even making a profit out of it. It doesn't matter if it's 50% in there or 40% or 35 or 30%. It is the business that's making the profit. And also you have that, remember, a classic case, the Affordable Care site for Obamacare, that it was contracted out and there were only, in many cases, one bidder or two bidders that could take on the contract. And these were people that had been around for a long time, like Oracle, etc., and they did not know what in the hell they were doing. Therefore, disaster came in to the Affordable Care site, which was a political backfire from that. The site collapsed. Then they brought in people that worked on President Obama's campaign and worked with the likes of Facebook, etc., that knew what they were doing. And they had to gradually prop the site up. This happened in a lot of states, repair a little bit here and a little bit there. And there was also just outright mismanagement on the part of some of these state organizations that did in fact take it on, but it took it on willy-nilly as a political plum. So these are patronage scheme. So these are one of the things, so-called dark side of the political work. So now the Trump administration is facing that with DJ Trump's ratings in the 30s, midterm election coming up. The Democrats running a lot of candidates that are quote-unquote better positioned. Now, in the last election, an example would have been in Missouri. They had a veteran there that was very well positioned, but because of the turnout for DJ Trump, and we talked about that in the presentation between Mr. Coates talked about it, and no doubt that was a spark plug for much of DJ Trump's movement. When you start talking about a 20th century policy back to the 50s or whatever, you are talking about the apartheid era in America, where women virtually did not work, where African Americans could not work in many, many places. And they didn't have the immigration policy problem at that time because there was very little immigration in the country. But this is a part of that. And what is now happening is, can the Republicans, now that they've passed their quote-unquote grand tax plan, can they deliver in a modern capitalist economy? Well, that's a very open question. One of the big problems has always been the ability to negate serious downturns or recessions or perhaps depressions. Now, you do have more quote-unquote regulations, Dodd-Frank, etc., out there that'll take some of this away, but old Trump has taken away roughly about 85% of the regulations. So you have environmental catastrophes happening daily, pipelines bursting all over the place, and you have other things that end the national parks. So this is a whole series of things that are happening there. They don't happen in a vacuum. So there's a plan to have DeFanico, a White House aide, an insider who worked for old John Boehner, you remember old John Boehner in the bottle, oversee some departments within the White House, the Office of Political Affairs, the Office of Internal Government Affairs, the Personnel Office of the President and Liaison Office. White House working to hire top political strategists to endorse people. They remember the fiasco from Luther Strange Love. And now they have more problems with Corey Lewinsky. He's out there. Period. So in other words, the staff has always been weak. They have to deal with the House Freedom Caucus. Said he's concerned about his party's prospects. I'm a numbers guy. This is from Mark Meadows. He's from North Carolina. We could lose as many as 15 to 18 seats. There's no doubt about it, because what is happening out here, many of these seats are marginal seats. And that in itself does cause problems. And when the Republicans move to, quote-unquote, dealing with the social safety net, the problem they have there, many of their supporters are dependent on Medicare and some on Medicaid. So if you start cutting those programs, those people will cut you loose. That is a big part of the problem. And then you have a tax bill that will not benefit them. Mark Meadows says policy is policy. His team probably gets an A, and I'm not sure where this all came from. His political team has probably been more interactive and engaged in the Senate and House than really what I saw during the Obama administration. Well, the Obama administration had a situation where they were engaged, there's no doubt about that, but at the same time, they didn't have a lot to be engaged with. The head of the Senate, old man McConnell, said about it his job to block anything that President Obama did under the illusion that the more policies and programs President Obama put into law, the more it would help the Republicans. But see, they always had something going on here. They had the undermining of the presidency, the integrity of the presidency, the birthers movement. That was one of the things that they used. And then they amplified Obamacare and various other things to make people think that it was not in their best interest to have even a cursory national health care program. And people started more and more to like Obamacare, and that has been their big problem. They could not appeal it, replace it. And the only reason they wanted to replace it was a business reason for that. That was it. There was no other reason at all for that. So this is a struggle that they have. Let's go quickly to Apple. Apple, to save a few dollars. And this is what happens in business enterprises that are proprietary like Apple's. So now they have lawsuits. And when you have lawsuits, it makes big news. They're in the Washington Post. There are often discounts on replacement batteries. And they slowed the speed down because the batteries were not there. There's often a discount on a replacement battery. This is with the iPhone 6 or later, the company said. It'll cost $29. It should be given away rather than about $80 there. And the cheapest price is in line with third-party repair shops. That doesn't mean anything there. It's a totally meaningless situation. But they've had literally several millions of dollars of bad publicity. A consumer rights group in France sued, also accusing them of degrading its old phones to sell new ones. So in other words, what that tells one is the iPhone concession is not what it used to be, period. The suit, this is a suit in several of them, stretched from Tel Aviv to Jersey. It owes Apple customers money and not previously disclosing the shutdown. The suit asked the iPhone owners of varying amounts. One in California is seeking $1 trillion in damage, which that used to mean the lawsuit would cost at least 10%. Now it's 20-something percent of, in other words, the damages there. Very expensive lawsuit in the Korean Republic. Telecommunications offices also took to look into it. That's according to the Korean Herald. So all over the world, people are there. In the Eastern District of New York, there's a suit, on the iPhone situation there. The suits cap off a rocky year for Apple, which has saw a lot of financial success, but a number of controversies, including a bug that prevented the iPhone owners from typing the I, several software issues. Those kinds of things are happening out there. And old Tim Cook, he earned $9.33 million end of year bonus. Stock performance was up. But one of the things you have to understand about the market can be up. Much of it is based on the psychology of the market, which just means there's a herd instinct there. It's not on solid performance of the stock. So this is one of the things you learn if you study the market. Unfortunately, economists usually don't do a very good job in the market. But that is where you are. Let me just move on here as we move. The foot-long business, the dark side of your foot-long business. They are no doubt talking about Subway. The $5 footlong costs you about $2. Then he pays the labor, electricity, and so forth and so on. This is some franchise owner here, Miller, who owns 3 of those franchises in Northern California. Says it costs him well over $4 to produce one footlong Subway. When the chain announced the price drop to $4.99, starting in January, he and hundreds of other outlets sent a strong word. Well, part of the problem is the whole Subway racket is not what it used to be. You now have customized sandwiches, more on the hoagie out of Philadelphia. In addition, Subway plans to relaunch the $5 footlong. McDonald's will revive its version of its dollar menu next month, and that's telling you the reason there. Taco Bell promised to expand its selection of discount, and Jack in the Box, that's out in California, is also going to work on there. So in other words, inherently the financial conflict between franchise and franchisees, franchisers, that is from Michael Dandy, an attorney in Minneapolis, who represents franchising conflicts with their parent. But it's beyond just a franchise. It's a matter of what the business operation is going on here. Burger King franchises have been out there. But the problem is getting the people in the door. In California, the minimum wage will be at $11 starting in January. Mills labor costs are up 50% from 10 years ago, no doubt about that. The cost of a full-price sub has risen only 20%, according to Miller. And there are 18,000 fast food restaurants in the U.S., and a lot of these restaurants are forced to close and forced to consolidate. Franchise like Little Caesars, that's the third largest pizza chain, also has been vocal behind the scene, refusing in some cases to carry the $5 pizza. But the idea is to get the old idea is get the people in the place on the $5 pizza and put some more ingredients on it, and away you go. So usually that's what you're trying to do there. Let me go to the public news. I'm not sure when we have this up, but public news service, we always from them. Why rural newspapers still matter. This is out of Hispano, New Mexico. 63 million, or 16% of U.S. residents live in, or 16%, I'm sorry, of U.S. residents live in rural America. While they increasingly embrace digital technology, they still rely upon local papers to provide them with news the net can't. Al Cross, he's director of the Institute for Rural Journalism, says rural residents are 10% less likely to have broadband, no doubt about it, are smartphones than city dwellers. While many don't believe all the information they read on the net, Cross said that they trust their local newspapers remains high. I think there's always going to be a demand for news of your locality, he says. I think that journalism is essential for democracy, no doubt about that. We have on some of our programs the Washington Post and Democracy, and now if it's put in the dark, you're in trouble. They deserve journalism, a good journalism too, and that people are always going to want the news of their locality. There's no doubt about that. That's why we use the public news service. Cross goes on to say rural residents are no longer expect to get national and international news from their local newspapers, but want school, police, and civic information and other sources don't provide. And you're going to see in the future more and more journalists locally, or citizen journalists at least, via blogs and what have you, providing some of this news out there that can go into live in local communities. Between 2007 and 2015, more than 100 daily newspapers closed. Many blamed smartphones and young people who now get their news online. There's no doubt about this. You could get this news online also from the Public News Service, and we ask people to donate to them. Bob Trapp, he owns and publishes the Rio Grande Sun in Rio Arbor County. I'm not sure where that is. He says his circulation did take a hit when the internet debuted. That's been a long time ago. But he's convinced that people of all ages in rural communities want to know who was born and who died and who is getting married. So he's providing that information. You don't see that on the web. Everybody says, oh, young people won't read the paper, they won't buy the paper. He said young people grow up, they get married, they have kids, they become involved in their communities, whether they want to or not. They decide that they want to know what's going on in their communities, and they buy the paper, which means that they buy the paper, they get the advertisers, they see the advertisers in the local paper. Trapp believes in the age of digital distraction, rural papers need to provide relevant and value. So it's whole add value routine from business. Information deserves don't take hold. Deserts, I'm sorry. I need to get close here. I don't have my glasses on. You know you are never going to be to do an excellent job in anything, but you can do a good job at covering the community events and school things he explains. But you have also got to show people where their tax dollars are being spent, because that's what makes a good newspaper. There are 7,000 weekly newspapers and 1,200 daily newspapers across the country. This is to the public a news service, and Ron Bowles, I think that's his name there, or Brewers, Bowles. Okay. Anyway, at least he got into the public news service, which made it digital, which people are now aware of these very small newspapers, specialty newspapers. If you remember, the Washington Post came back from almost extinct there. The now called the Amazon Post, but nonetheless, Bezos saved the Post, put the money in there, and now they have a decent newspaper. Excuse me. The same thing happened at some of the public stations where as journalists were being laid off, right and left, as LBJ would say. They picked up some of these journalists and they added to their staffs. So you have some of the regional public radio outlets that really stocked up. They went into specialty programming, and thus they're now able to present that type of information not only in their local situation or area, but they also are producing it regionally and also some nationwide programming. When you have the staff, when you have the expertise as far as technical expertise, and of course you have the broadcast, you can then create programming and syndicate it, providing you have content. There's a lot of content out there, but what is also is happening is more and more people are producing content that is called internet radio. There's some debate with some of these people. The commercial term podcasting, we never agree with that. We say internet radio. But nonetheless, what you're having is a traditional Jerry Pippin, or the Pippin model, which Jerry started broadcasting in the late 90s from a small radio station, the very red state of Oklahoma. But what he did was he immediately streamed online. So instead of, say, having a few thousand listeners, he had the capabilities of having millions of listeners by streaming his radio station and his various features for about 3 hours a night. It was very inexpensive at that time. So what that means is if you have a local programming format, you can still stream very inexpensively across the country, because now you can go on the net. There are, you can be on iHeart, you can be on Spreaker Live, you can be on Blog Talk. There's a few of us there, or you can put your own station together, rent space, buy whatever hardware you need, and you're in the game, literally. And you can run a few hours a day, 24/7. Storage is inexpensive. Create a website, then you're virtual, you're gone, you're out there. So these are the things that are actually changing up what we call news. You can even broadcast local news. The Black Radio Network, Scotty out of he's south of North Carolina, whichever one he's out of, he does some of that. He does some local news also there, and national and world news. Today, down in the red state of Alabama, Mr. Doug Jones, otherwise known as Wimpy Jones, was certified the winner in that election. Judge Moore filed a writ, but the writ was turned back. The people of Alabama had had enough of Judge, so Judge had to just say right off in the sunset. Or as Tennessee Reed said, Haas rode the judge. But we won't debate who rode whom in this situation, but the judge is out of the game, at least for now. He could return later in the ball game. I think the people of Alabama are now looking to, quote unquote, the big game is the Sugar Bowl. As the state doesn't have a franchise in it, a major league franchise, period. So they play Clemson there, and we don't know where that is going. Racy, while we're here, Racy Taylor, an African-American woman from Alabama, raped by 6 Europeans in 1944, has finally died. She was, let's see, get the age on her here while we're here. Nice picture of her. I'll have to put it up. She lived in Winter Haven, Florida. She drew 97 years old. Racy Taylor died in her sleep at a nursing home in Aberville. Her brother said she was 24 when she was abducted and raped as she walked home from a church in Aberville. Her attackers left her on the roadside in an isolated area. The NAACP assigned none other than Rosa Parks to investigate the case. She rallied support for justice for Taylor. 2 all-European or all-white juries declined to indict the 6 men who admitted to authorities that they assaulted her. In an interview with the Associated Press, Ms. Taylor that she believed the men who attacked her are dead, but she still would like an apology from officials. That was now 7 years ago in 2010. It means a whole lot to me, Taylor said. The people who done this to me, they can't do no more apology, and most of them are gone, probably. So, anyway, nonetheless, the legislature in Alabama passed an official apology in 2011. Taylor's story, along with those of other African-American women attacked by Europeans during the Civil Rights era, is told in a documentary called The Dark End of the Street. That is a book by Delina McGirt, released in 2010. A documentary on her case, the rape of Racy Taylor, was released this year. Racy Taylor and other African women like her who spoke up when the damage was the greatest. That is from Mary Baranski, the documentary director, told NBC News in an email. It is these strong women's voices of the 40s and the 50s and their efforts to take back their bodies that led to the Montgomery bus boycott and other movements that followed, notably the one we are witnessing today, the Me Too movement. So in other words, none of these movements are in a vacuum. They all come out. Let's do that poll here before we do our sports and go to Al Franken. This is by the PPP, Tom Jansen as usual. This was taken on the 28th of December. Minnesotans don't think Al Franken should resign. Franken remains popular, especially with women. This is the PPP poll there. 50% of voters think he should not resign, and only 42 who think that he should go through with his planned resignation. There's little appetite from Democratic voters of the state at the state level for Franken to go, with 71% opposing his departure. A majority of independents, 52%, as well think he should not resign, and we have the same thought patterns there. He remains well above the average in popularity for a senator, with 53% approving of his job. He is doing to 42% disapprove. PPP rarely finds a senator with a majority approval rating in their home state. Franken continued popularity is being driven especially by 57% of women. They like the job he's doing, to 37% that don't. By contrast, DJ Trump stands at 40-58 with women in the state of Minnesota. DJ is not that popular. But he's doing a little better. He's at least at 40%. Minnesotans don't like how the process with Franken resignation is played out, 60% think the Senate Ethics Committee should have completed its investigation, including 79% of Democrats, 61% of independents, before any decision was made by Franken. Further, while only 35% think he should have resigned immediately, beyond that, 76% of Minnesota voters think their vote should have been more important in determining whether Franken stayed in office or not. Only 12% who think he should have been determined by his fellow senators. So in other words, he should have ran for re-election. This is an outliner, no doubt about that. Do you think or disapprove of DJ Trump? 44%, that's higher than national, something we'll watch. And 53% disapprove. Do you approve or disapprove Al Franken? 53% approve him, 42% did not, and 5% they weren't sure. Should Al Franken resign? 42% yes. Should resign. 50% should not resign. 8% were unsure about it. Do you think the Senate Ethics Committee should complete its investigation? 60% said yes to that. 35% said no, and not sure. 5% not sure. 35% sure. Whose votes do you think should have been more important there? Minnesota voters, 76%. Other senators in Washington, there also only 12% there, not sure, 12%. But as you look at that, if the election were held today, in the election for president, who did you vote for there? This is very interesting here, very close. Did you vote for DJ Trump? 43% in this poll, 48% for Hillary the Monster Clinton, and 9% I did not vote. So you can see what happened in Minnesota. Almost 10% of the people did not vote there. That's why it was a very close election. The monster won the state, but by a small margin. And if you're a Democrat, 40% of this poll was. 28% of the poll was Republican. Shows you basically where the poll was. 32% were independents. So you have, 60% of the people are Republicans, independents, 40% Democrats. In this poll, 93% of them were Europeans, 7% were others. I guess I didn't even include African Americans in here. If you're 18 to 45, 27% of those people, and 46% 65. You can kind of see where this is going. Older people were the majority of this poll, 43% there, and over 65, 30%. So in other words, 30% of the people were over 65, and if you go 18 to 45, it's only 27%. So this would be what you would call an off-year election type of poll. And won't go too much into that. This is just the rest of it here. I think we went into, did we go into gender? I believe we did. There, yeah. So anyway, this is what we call the tabs. Let's do the sports now. As they say, roll along here on the last program. Incidentally, we'll have the week that was. That will be at our regular time tomorrow there on the 30th. And on Sunday, we'll do the New Year's Eve program as we traditionally do. And we'll do the Monday morning quarterback on the 1st of January 2018. So we'll roll it right along there. I heard Paula on Facebook there asking about some restaurant in Dallas. We couldn't help her on that. I have no idea. They were going, I believe, to the Sugar Bowl. We'll have all that tomorrow night. I'm not sure when that game is right now. We tried to stay up at least on the college football as we wait on our browser to change here. And we go to do the NBA. It's funny sometimes when it's live, things don't cooperate. We normally have up at least a scoreboard. We didn't put it up this time around. We were too busy dealing with Judge Moore and his departure, I suppose. Incidentally, a lot of the Subway restaurants are closing, and a lot of that is the changing nature of food, as more people do takeout, more people eating home, etc. Anyway, these scores were from the 28th on. Wait a minute here. Yeah. The Pistons were at the Magic. Magic 102 to 89. The Rockets were in Boston. 1 point game. Celtics 99, Rockets 98. Early in the season. Timberwolves were in Milwaukee. The Bucks 102 to 96. The Knickerbockers were in San Antonio. Spurs 119 to 107. The 76ers were out in Oregon. 76ers 114 to 110. And that does it for Major League there. And let's see, I don't know if we had any bowl games last night. We keep looking to see where we are here. There'll be a lot of bowl games, incidentally, this weekend and on New Year's Eve. Traditionally has been the bowls. It changed a little now, but they have the national playoff thing. That is in January. That has changed, but some other things have not changed. The Cotton Bowl, the Orange Bowl, the bowl in Pasadena, big bowls. They've traditionally been at the Rose Bowl, the bowl of all. It depends. A lot of it depends now on who is in which bowl. They have enough bowls now where everyone can at least have a bowl. That's one way of putting it. Let's see what we got going in here. We got to get down here a little bit more. We got Tuesday's bowls in. That's the 26th, 27th on Wednesday. We gave those last night. And we did have two. Sanford, TCU. TCU 39 to 37. Very close game there. Washington State and Michigan State. Michigan State, new fellow that went to Michigan State. 42 to 17. Washington State. And let's see, which one was this? Maybe this was the one they were going to. Oklahoma State 30 to Virginia Tech 21. Michael Vick is not playing there anymore, so that's how we ended up there. And that is the Camping World Bowl. Well, I guess that was not the one they were going to. The Military Bowl. That is Navy 49 to 7 over Virginia. Poor old Virginia. I haven't figured out which bowl they were going to yet. There's some bowls tomorrow. We have Louisville, Mississippi State, Iowa State, Memphis, Washington, and Penn State, Wisconsin, and they weren't going there. I don't know. Anyway, Michigan and South Carolina, that'll be on the New Year's Day. And then we have UFC and Auburn, Notre Dame and LSU, and Georgia and Oklahoma. That'll be in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. We have the Mercedes-Benz Superdome Bowl. This is in the Big Easy, number 1 Clemson and Bama. And then we'll have the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That's in Atlanta. That'll be on the 8th there. So, well, that's the way we're going here. Maybe they were going to the World Bowl. I don't know. It's interesting when you don't even know which bowl they are. The Camping World Bowl. Not sure about that one. Anyway, we don't even know where it was. We have to go and search, find out where. Let's see. I was in Orlando, Florida. They couldn't have been going to that one. I'm not sure where. I thought they were going to the Cotton Bowl. Maybe I was confused on what they were doing here. I have to ask Paula about that one. He got into the Cotton Bowl. Anyway, there is the Cotton Bowl. That's the AT&T Cotton Bowl in Arlington, Texas. She lives in Dallas, so that would be where they would be going, the Cotton Bowl Classic. Okay, we know Ohio State is in that bowl, and the Buckeyes, number 5, USC. Well, they've already played. What the hell is going on here with these people? I don't know. Stranger things have happened to us. I don't know. So that would be USC Trojans on Wednesday and Ohio State. And that's all we have. Well, we have the classic, so I'm not sure. Now we go back again. As we roll it around here, we'll edit this out. Don't worry about it. Which game are we going to? Huh? Even more confused now. Guess we missed it. Out on it some kind of way here. I guess not. Well, maybe on Saturday. I don't know. We'll just have to leave this in the air. Nonetheless, we'll see you on the Week Venoise. We also have our financial program, macroeconomics program, Numbers Man. We'll be here with that. The real estate news, the sales news, we'll get some of that in. Some of the rest of the holiday sales we won't get in until in January. We'll get that part of it in, but we'll have enough to keep things going. We also have an open source report to bring forward to you. This will do it for us. Happy New Year to everyone. Happy Kwanzaa.